Hello and welcome to the International Mediation Awareness Week podcast. I'm Joanne Law, Regional Coordinator for Australasia. The next IMAW, International Mediation Awareness Week, is on the 7th till the 11th of November 2022. Leading up to that, this podcast will introduce you to regional coordinators, event partners and speakers who'll share with you their insights and passion for mediation. Mediation for every stage of life. Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Jane Bryan, who's from the University of Warwick. Welcome, Jane.
Hi, Joanne. Really great to be here with you.
Excellent. Now, I forgot to check with you, what's your role at the university?
Okay, I'm an academic, so I'm a reader in Warwick Law School. I used to be a solicitor and then I turned into teaching law students. So I've been doing that since 2009. But more recently, I've been asked to be the academic lead of one of the university-wide programmes, bringing community values education to incoming students and students throughout the university. And I also created Warwick Mediation and lead that, which is the peer mediation service for the university.
Okay, so the service for university students who have an issue and haven't been able to resolve it themselves with other students, faculty?
Absolutely. Across the university, we started with training students in the law school and staff to be mediators. But then we decided that actually there was so much, I don't want to say unhappiness at university, but there was certainly quite a little bit of conflict in kitchens and between groups doing work together and also amongst the staff body, and not a lot of options for anything other than a very formal process or just leaving things to fester. So it seemed a good opportunity to use some of the skills our students and staff were learning in a very supportive environment to offer the service to staff and students as well.
Interesting. So I like that. So mediation sits somewhere between formal and fester to help people sort things out.
Actually, that could be our byline. Our tagline.
Absolutely, between formal and fester. I like it. I just want to loop back to community values education. Tell me a little bit more about that. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I was really honoured to be invited to take that role, actually. I've done quite a lot of stuff in the department and the faculty on equality, diversity and inclusion. So there's an Athena Swan Award, which is about empowering female academics to progress and be treated well in academia. And I'd led an application for our department to get an award in that. So I'd kind of positioned myself in that role of wanting to be inclusive and work on equality across the university and the department. And so the Community Values Education Programme has several remits, but the key thing that we deliver is active bystander education to incoming students, undergraduates and postgraduates. We found that there were lots of instances where people witnessed unacceptable behaviour, be that homophobia, racism, inappropriate sexual conduct or jokes or whatever, but didn't know what to do. In a way, their silence was painful for them because they had that discomfort. They knew things weren't right, but was also creating a culture on campus, as across many other sectors of society, where the silent majority don't signal that they're uncomfortable, and so the perpetrators feel they've got everybody's approval, and the unacceptable conduct just continues. The banter in the locker rooms, that kind of thing. So we set about using some of the research that was carried out by the University of Exeter and the West of England under the Active Bystander Initiative to bring the education to students. And so we now offer them 5 strategies, easy to use, that they can consider doing if they see unacceptable conduct. And that's been really successful. The university have rolled it out to all incoming students, and the SU have required their key leaders in the student societies and clubs to undertake our longer training so that they can really start to change culture.
Wow, that's amazing. What a great program. Because we all know if people aren't sure what to do, they'll often do nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or kind of barge in to a situation and feel that the only thing they can do is be direct and say and call it out in a way that actually might be quite unsafe for them or for others around. So it's empowering people to notice and respond to that gut feeling that things aren't right.
Yeah.
And then offer a range of strategies that can be kind of direct.
Absolutely. So they have to, assess the situation to think about, okay, this is not a strategy where it's going to be safe for me or maybe safe for the other person as well.
Absolutely. Nobody wants these kind of heroes rushing in and making things worse.
Yes.
And it might be one of the strategies would be to actually just notice that somebody's kind of said something inappropriate in a meeting and check in with the person afterwards who was perhaps the target or felt mistreated in that situation, because it might not be appropriate to actually say something in the meeting for many different reasons, power imbalances, those kind of things. But just checking in with the person afterwards who may have felt impacted might really help that person who might have felt that they were subject to an unfair comment.
Absolutely. That's excellent. And I'm just wondering, did you find that helped, I guess, to give a language to people that dovetailed into your mediation program?
Absolutely. I think it's just given people a license to respond to that sense of unease and to feel that they don't have to just passively watch things unfold. They can have a role, not, as I said, to be the saviours themselves, but to support people. And I think it is that using your voice, your ability to communicate, to actually make a difference. So I'm quite involved in the student voice and activism part of universities and making sure that course reps are able to communicate and have an input into the things that they study or how they study them or how universities are arranged. And I think it all goes back to that idea of dialogue and the power you can have to just put your point across, which I think in mediation, that creates that space where people can be heard and can listen. Definitely. So I think there's an overall arc to everything I do, although sometimes it does feel that I've got lots of fingers in lots of pies and I have to kind of think, no, it is the dialogue part that's hanging everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you need to step back and actually to see the bigger picture, because they're usually connected. This is the International Mediation Awareness Week podcast, and we're really looking to engage with people that help with organising and present and participate. It seems like you've done all of those things last year. So congratulations on being so connected.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it really is a great team, as you know, Joanne, and the way that Will Chalmers actually coordinates everybody and gives people that opportunity to get involved was actually fantastic, very welcoming, and I was glad to be involved. And importantly, I was able to involve some of my students and some of the staff mediators at Warwick. So it was a bit of a team from Warwick that got involved.
Excellent. And that's a great example for organisations and mediation programs. It is a bit of a team effort to bring people together. So your presentation last year, what did you talk about? If you maybe just whet people's appetite to go and find the recording.
One of the things that we've done at Warwick, as I alluded to just before, was to introduce mediation, both into the legal education of our undergraduates and postgraduates, but also more widely, and also to introduce mediation support to our staff and students. We're not the only law school or university that do this, but I think our model of using peer mediators, so students to mediate issues where students are in conflict, is quite unusual. And so I shared some of the things that we've been doing and some of the things we've been finding, and an invitation really for anyone to get in touch with me. I've worked with an excellent mediation trainer, Emma McAndry, who has been very supportive, has set these mediation clinics up in other institutions, including her own, some time ago. And it was just sharing the kind of ups and downs of our journey to get us to where we are now.
I think that would be of great interest to a number of mediators, because often what happens is that, probably a different pathway to yours, but mediators might be employed within an organisation to bring in a mediation program, and it can be really challenging.
Absolutely. And I think it can feel to some that it's quite a long progress. So when you say to somebody, well, we're going to engage in mediation, there are going to be meetings beforehand, and then hopefully we'll progress to a joint meeting, you can see people clocking the hours up and thinking, gosh, this is quite a long process. Maybe we can just speed it up somehow or do something more efficiently. But I think when you see that time that you invest in trying to create a space for people to resolve their differences, rather than racing to a solution or not addressing it at all, I think you see that it is the most efficient way to try and make some progress, because people in conflict often have very poor mental health or underperformance, or they leave, or it escalates to something else and it becomes a complaint or a disciplinary measure. So I think that it's certainly at Warwick, it's been trying to persuade people that actually the time is worth giving to this.
Yes, I think that's a really important point to make, and that particularly the pre-mediation, the preparation, there's often tension around that, and can't we just fill out a form and then go and do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We all want to be slick and smooth and efficient, but sometimes the things are worth doing well.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, because that preparation, that pre-mediation is really part of the process. It's helping people to think outside the conflict mindset that we all develop if we're in conflict. Them bad, me good.
Yeah, I try not to, and I know lots of people will say this, so it's not unusual, but I try not to think that the goal is that joint meeting, and that the journey to it is just as much part of everything and as valuable, as you say, to the participants. And even if we don't get to a joint meeting because it's decided that's not what everybody needs, then there is still value in that process of reflection and discussion that can go on.
Absolutely. And that's a really important part of it, because mediation may not be appropriate, or maybe not right now, or they might get enough insight in those meetings that they go off and have a coffee and sort it out themselves.
Absolutely. Often these are staff members who've worked together for a long time. They just need perhaps a little bit of an external opportunity to reflect on what's going on. And the people we've been able to help with mediation at Warwick, the staff members especially, and the students, the turnaround has been fantastic. And it's been so much more healthy, I think, for all participants than if they had either let it fester without saying anything, or decided to go through a more formal process, which, as we all know, through their adversarial nature, often drives everybody apart and does more damage than it actually resolves.
Absolutely. Certainly here in Australia, unemployment is quite low, and we've all heard about the Great Resignation. If people are not happy, and it's usually conflict that makes them not happy, they'll leave, go somewhere else.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have our unemployment issues here in the UK, but it is often a self-preservation mechanism, and often the last resort, that people just cannot stay in an unhealthy environment, and they do leave, or they spiral into kind of these zones when they're underperforming, they're very unhappy, and they many times have to take time off for poor mental health reasons. So it's not good at an individual level or an institutional level.
No, absolutely not. It sounds like you're doing quite a few mock mediations and things like that as well.
Yeah, we're doing quite a few mediations, and we try and do it as a co-mediation and have mediation representatives and observations as much as we can, so we can support the people who are undergoing the process, but also not undergoing the process, who are part of the process being supported, as well as the people who are learning to be mediators. But in addition, as you say, we try and expand what we can offer to the students as continuing professional development, competitions, for example, mock mediations, to build confidence. And what I particularly like about doing peer mediation is we often pair a staff member with a student, so they can really work as equal partners and often see another side of the other person that they might not see in the traditional teaching or university systems, where we're often quite hierarchical
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you're seeing some benefits there in, I suppose, in expanding the relationships and connections.
Absolutely. We train people in mixed cohort classes. So not only do we mix the undergraduates and the postgraduates, which is quite unusual in itself in the university, but we also bring in staff members, academics, professors, professional services team members, SU, student union staff, so that often you are learning alongside people you wouldn't normally meet in your day job or in your student career. And we've certainly had lots of feedback of people feeling that they were seeing another side of other groups. So they were demystifying people, dispelling stereotypes. There was one staff member who didn't usually deal with students in their role and said they came out with a completely different opinion of students because they were able to see how fantastic they were, how advanced in, how just accomplished they were. And I think sometimes in some roles, if you're perhaps dealing with complaints, you only see more negative maybe aspects of what students go through.
Oh, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense because, our sliver of the world is what we make our impressions from. So if we can expand that.
Exactly. Yeah, we only know what we see, really. It's a good way to broaden those views.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like you're really doing some leading work there at Warwick. So
I'd like to think so. I think it's people are starting to understand what we do and use us more and more. So it's really well. Very successful.
I guess that's one of the problems that I see with people trying to set up mediation programs, whether it's within university or schools or a workplace. How long has it taken to really get some traction?
Well, we started the first training course in February 21. So it was in the middle of the UK's lockdown. The professional body for mediators had permitted online training to count for accreditation purposes. So I worked with, as I said, Emma McAndry, and we delivered online training. We got some funding from the university to deliver this free of charge. I put out a call to the law students to ask for anybody who wanted to be a part of this course. There were 10 places at that time, and I got 340 responses. So I had 10 places and 340 expressions of interest. Great, but I just thought, lots of students are looking for opportunities to continue their career development, gain transferable skills, and connect with people, despite the fact that our campus was closed and everything had gone online. So we've been trying to work with the students, finding lots of different pots of money, offering severely, discounted courses to try and meet some of that demand. But the demand is also there from staff members. So we're having that joint training. Wow. Then in about 6 months after that, when the academic year started again, so September 21, we introduced the peer mediation service. Those students and staff that had been trained with the support of more established mediators, then offering the service to staff and students. So the service has been running not even a full academic year now. And we've currently got 6 live cases, students and staff self-referring, being referred by personal tutors, student discipline teams, complaint teams, residential life. So it's meeting a need.
Absolutely. And for everyone all around the world, the adjustment from the shock and the changes of COVID and then coming back into working with everyone else.
Absolutely. Gosh, what a shock it's been for some of us, to actually have to get ready to go to work. Get onto campus. What we have continued to do, however, is keep the online training online, even though lots more things are happening in person. And the reason for that is because our students and staff told us that they liked to have the privacy during role play. So it's quite hard to maybe get the safety of a space on campus if you are doing the training not in a private room. And if you're having to test yourself by doing a role play, that can often take a lot out of you. And students said they preferred to be in their home environment. So we kept things online.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of benefits in terms of flexibility for people when they're online. So that's really interesting. And I know that you're going to be involved again this year. Have you got a focus of what you're going to be talking about, an update on where you were?
So excited to be working on it again. I'm sure everybody says that, but I really genuinely am. The week, as you'll know, is going to be divided into sectors, and the education sector is one of the days, which I think is fantastic. It'll hopefully bring together a lot of people with an interest or a curiosity about mediation in education. Certainly we'll be trying to involve universities, but also schools and further education colleges, and really across the age ranges of people involved in education. We'll have the same format, I think, of talks and discussions and mock mediations. We'll have a big role for students to get involved and participate in all of those activities. I'm working with somebody else who's involved with Mediator Network, Kudrat Dev, and we're really hoping that some of the work we're doing around student mediators will be able to be presented and form a big part of the week.
Absolutely. And Kudrat's in India, so the connections and the opportunities that the internet opens up for us are all around the world.
Absolutely. And truly a really international Mediation Awareness Week.
It's very exciting. So yes, and that's really something that for those that are listening, our intention this year is to have the days themed around different areas that mediation's being used. And in Australia also, we'd like to have a focus day on the education sector and what universities and schools and others that are bringing people together to learn are doing to help prevent conflict and disputation from affecting that experience. I think it should be very interesting. And do you know what other sectors they're looking at in the UK for the other days, or not quite decided as yet?
I think there have been discussions, healthcare, for example.
Healthcare. I know in Australia, we definitely like to have a focus on elder mediation and issues there. That's certainly been another area that's come to light with COVID, and had a royal commission into aged care here in Australia, and certainly significant issues have come up, and sadly mediation was barely mentioned in the Royal Commission report.
That's actually the same here in the UK. I think we do have issues in many aspects of healthcare and elderly care, and like you say, I don't think people really understand the possibilities that mediation presents. So one thing that's quite exciting that we're doing at the moment with our, my dog is trying to present me with a toy, so if you can hear a wagging tail.
Yes.
They're getting excited.
It's very cute. I wish for everyone listening to the podcast you could see it. Is the cutest little dog, and he's got it looks like a large shoe. It's
a kind of fun, like baseball shoe slipper. It's one of my sons, so I don't want it to really get much closer, as you can imagine.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from
one thing we're piloting at Warwick Mediation, which is exciting, and it's part of our kind of university's
visit the International Mediation
want to reach out to the region around us and create a difference, is we're working with our local law centre who are involved with health complaints. Absolutely, working with the local community. Both mediators who are newly trained, we're hoping to bring them on board to add to our pool of mediators, but also offering pro bono or free mediation services to local communities, often because in the UK at least, professional mediation is really expensive and way beyond the reach of many people. So we're working with the local law centre in Coventry, which is quite close to us, who deal with complaints about healthcare, and either the care that somebody's received that might have been below standard or was absent, or maybe some benefits were denied, perhaps unfairly. Now, the Law Centre have asked us to get involved to mediate after the complaints have been resolved. So after people have gone through the formal complaints process, often the medical relationships have to continue because it's a patient who is dealing with a healthcare team at the hospital or at the general practitioners. And because they've gone through these quite damaging adversarial processes, often those relationships are in tatters, and that really does, nobody any good, and often will roll into then another formal complaint. And so what we've been asked to do is to get involved to offer an alternative after the complaint has been heard to those parties who would like to have mediation to talk about what's happened and to agree a way forward. Now, there's reasons why it's not diverting cases from complaints, but this is the process that they've asked us to get involved with at this stage. I suppose it's because they get funding for the complaints that they hear. You wouldn't really want mediation to have to follow the complaints process. You would hope that it would come before to replace it, as it does at the university. But I think this is helpful because we're working with the external provider to dovetail into what they offer. And certainly when there are cases that can't be resolved through the complaints process, maybe they're out of time, then we're going to be invited to see if the parties would like to mediate so that they can at least talk about what they've gone through.
That's very interesting. I haven't worked in that area, but I've worked in workplace mediation, where often there's a complaint, an investigation, and it's not upheld. They've got to continue working together, and it can be really hard for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, you see the same thing with workplaces, absolutely. Exactly. Like people say, well, you can leave, but that's often not what people want to do. They often love their jobs and need them, and leaving is not the option. Staying, however, can be really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. But having those conversations, what I've found is through having those conversations, often people can come to accept the judgment of that other process, because often when you start the mediation, they don't accept it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully there's a reason why it came to the conclusion it did. And like you say, and knowing a little bit more can often help you understand a lot more.
Absolutely. And there's always, I guess, a gap between the letter of the law and what people think should happen. And in mediation, that's where we work often, in that space where, you know, okay, that might not have been wrong according to that rule, but this is how it impacted me, can make a change.
Yeah, and absolutely. And in the law school, we're often talking about that space. You know, you can't change every rule. Not every rule is going to be right in every situation. So, you know, how can you work with it or problematize it and try and bring about reform? So, yes.
Oh, that's a very exciting program. I'll definitely be looking forward to hearing more of that over the time as well. So,
thank you, Joanne. That means a lot.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, I think, as mediators, we often talk about gaps. As we shine the light more on mediation and other forms of ADR, or alternative dispute resolution, appropriate dispute resolution, it really helps people to see that mediators are quietly, confidentially working away all sorts of places.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, just providing those options for people.
But one of the things that you mentioned as well is that we'll invite people if they want to engage. And that's an important part of our processes, is that it is voluntary and it is up to people to make a decision. Yes, I want to change the current situation. Yes, I'm going to, I suppose, have enough faith, enough hope that things could be better, that I'll engage in this process, even though it might be a bit uncomfortable or a little bit worrying.
Absolutely. And, you know, there is that vulnerability there. So you can understand why people, you know, do take the time to think about it. But as you say, it's completely voluntary, confidential. And, you know, hopefully that little bit of faith that if you're vulnerable, the other person will be too, and progress will be made, is, I think, what keeps the process so successful.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about some of the things that are likely to happen for the International Mediation Awareness Week this year in November for the education sector. And part of that is the mock mediations, which are really valuable because you can be a fly on the wall and think, oh, that's what happens.
Absolutely. I'm very much into the learning by doing and also by observing others do. Mediations are confidential. There aren't so many we can just sit in and observe when they're actually taking place, because we don't want the space to be cluttered with people who aren't directly involved in the process. But mediations that are mock can be really impactful. I know I was a participant last year with my husband. We were the disputants, and that you really get into character. You start to really believe that you're arguing over the lease.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You don't think you can act until you've done a mock mediation, and you suddenly find it all becoming very realistic.
Absolutely, yes. It can be quite a lot of fun, although we do tend to give students, this is the mediation etiquette. You are not going for an Academy Award. People will often, even in a mock mediation, will come up with things to make themselves look better.
We're so programmed to want people to like us that we'll even do it when it's not us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really an opportunity, I guess, to observe human nature a little bit as well. It can be quite fun. But look, I've just glanced at the clock and I realise we will have to look at wrapping up soon. But it's been a delight to get a little bit of an insight in some of the things that you're working and with and making happen. You should be very proud of yourself.
The time has just flown, actually, Joanne. I've just looked at the clock as well and couldn't believe the time has gone so quickly. It's been a real delight to speak to you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Really value it.
Likewise. Now, for anyone listening, if you haven't already been to the International Mediation Awareness Week website, please go there, check it out. It's IMAW.org. Very easy. You don't need me to write it down for you. IMAW.org, and you can see what's on. We're still planning the program. If you'd like to get involved, there's many different ways you can do that. Contact the local team in your country, any country in the world. There's going to be a regional host who you can engage with. We need volunteers to help make everything run smoothly. We definitely need audience. So if you're curious about mediation, we'd love you to come. It's not a mediation conference just for mediators. We're hoping to spread the word so that more people are using, engaging, learning, and helping to spread peace.
Absolutely.
So thank you once again. It really has been delightful chatting with you, and very nice to meet your little dog as well.
Thank you.